Hi, I'm Chef Raphael. On today's episode, I'm going to show you how to make a bread and butter pudding. Now, this is a classic British dessert dish that is served warm. Now, I have a sweet tooth. I actually have a weakness when it comes to sweets and desserts. This is one of my favorite desserts. It takes me way back when I was working in the UK. Now, in this video, you learn how to actually make the recipe. It's so simple. All the main ingredients being bread and butter, and then there's a little bit of custard. So watch till the end, you see how simple it is to make it. And if I could dig in, so here I've served it with some ice cream. You can actually serve it plain while it's warm, but and a little bit of ice cream. It's always nice when you have warm and cold meeting in your mouth. Like I said, super simple to make. Watch till the end and you see how simple it is. Let's get cooking. Welcome to the show. Now, this recipe is one of my favorite dessert recipes, and actually takes me back to when I was working in the UK, which is a long time ago. So what I love about this recipe is the way it's warm, and it's actually simple to make, like you will see. So for the ingredients, it's actually the bread is the main ingredient, and the butter. So when you're using butter, make sure it's soft. You can also use margarine, and you actually apply a generous amount. So I'll show you the procedure on that. So there's the bread, butter, and then we have cream, sugar, milk, and here what I've also added to the recipe is also some raisins. Raisins is optional, but it actually makes a big difference. I love it. If you don't have it, you can skip it. We also have the sugar and the eggs. Now, starting with the bread, the first thing you want to do is to trim off the edges. Now, technically you can actually skip this part, especially if you have soft white bread, but the edges tend to be a little bit more crispier than you want them to be, so you can trim them off, and like I said, it's optional. So I'll start by trimming off the edges of the bread, all of them that I'll use. And then after that, I'll apply the margarine. So when you're applying the margarine or butter, again, butter, make sure that it's soft. Apply a generous amount on both sides of the bread. And then after finishing applying the margarine or the butter, arrange the bread on the dish. Make sure you're using a glass dish or a rectangular dish, basically an oven-proof dish. A round one, it can also work, but you tend to waste more bread when you're using a round one. So a rectangular or a square one would be best, because you're using bread that is either rectangular or square. So the next thing you want to do after finishing the bread is to make the custard. Now, the custard is naturally the mixture of all the wet, which is the egg, the cream, the milk, the sugar. Sugar is about 6 tablespoons, actually 5 tablespoons, which is about 60 grams of sugar. You have 3 eggs. We have 250 ml of milk. We also have 200 ml of the cooking cream or whipping cream. So you mix everything together. I'm also going to add a little bit of vanilla essence to give it an extra flavor. And then just whisk everything together, and then pour the egg custard into the bread. Now, when you're pouring, the whole idea here is to just make sure that you soak up all the bread in the custard. And basically, if you have to, you can even press the bread to get under the custard, especially depending on the amount of bread that you're having on your dish. It should be soaked into the bread, the custard, before baking. So after making sure it's soaked, I'll show you how it looks before you start baking it. So this is the way it should be. And what I've also done before this particular point is you actually need to press the bread down into the custard. See, the liquid is just floating around. You want the bread to be soaked by to be fully soaked with this custard, and basically leave it to sit for about half an hour or until most of this liquid has been soaked up by the bread, and you can't see any dry bread on. So even if you need to press it down a little bit more as it continues to soak up, you can do that. And after that, all we need to do is to bake it into the oven for about 20 minutes. I'll actually tell you the final time after I've baked it. It literally depends on the thickness of your bread and butter pudding, depending on the size of your dish. But how you know it's actually cooked, it will actually be golden brown on the top. We'll bake it at 180 degrees. But right now, let it continue to set, and then I'll put it in the oven, and then we'll be back to see how it looks when it's done. So the bread and butter pudding is ready, and let me first address one thing before I forget. Now these are the trimmings from the bread. Now this you can actually use this to make breadcrumbs, homemade breadcrumbs. Two ways you can do that. You can actually leave it outside, maybe on a tray, so that it's actually level, not heaped like this, and let it dry out naturally. Or you can actually even put it in the oven while you're baking the bread and butter pudding. Either when you have finished, you leave it in the oven so that with the residual heat, and let them dry out in the oven. They don't have to color to become brown. All they need to be is hard and dried. And then after that, what you do with this is just crush them either in a blender or using a rolling pin, and you can mash them until they're actually breadcrumbs, and that will not be a waste. So now, for the bread and butter pudding, how you know it's ready, it needs to be golden brown when you're removing it from the oven, and basically it will also dry up. All the custard, the liquid that was there, will have soaked up into the bread, and all that is left is to make a nice glaze. To make the glaze, all you need is either apricot jam or marmalade. Here I'm actually using marmalade, and what you need to do is place some marmalade, like 2 tablespoons, onto a hot pan and a little bit of water. So the idea is to melt that marmalade into a nice consistency, and you keep stirring it into that small amount of water. Crush the big lumps if there are any, and let it melt away until it's a nice consistency. So this is what you want to see, the way it looks like right now. And all that is left is to use a small brush and apply on top of the bread and butter pudding to have a nice shiny look. Now if you skip this step, it's fine. It's just that it looks nicer with the glaze, and orange marmalade or even apricot jam will work. Dish is here. It's nice and hot. I love the raisins. Like I said in the beginning, you can skip the raisins, and you can actually even add chopped chocolate chips or chopped chocolate instead of the raisins. It can still work. I prefer it with the raisins. Like I said in the beginning, this takes me back more than 15 years when I was in the UK, when I was working there, and just looking at this, my mouth is watering. Now to serve this, you actually serve it when it's still hot or warm, and all you need to do is just divide into an equal size portion. Serve it plain when it's still warm. If you're going to put it in the fridge, the next time you're going to heat it up, just put it in the microwave, let it become warm, and then serve it when it's warm. That's the best way to enjoy it. So I'm signing out. I'm Chef Raphael. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and also on TikTok, all as Chef Raphael. And until next time, goodbye.